Our story begins approximately 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, though some evidence now suggests even earlier, when the ancestors of today's native peoples first crossed into the continent from northeastern Asia, following herds of massive Ice Age animals across what was then dry land connecting Siberia and Alaska, a landmass archaeologists call Beringia. This was not one single tribe, nor one unified people. These were many groups, diverse in language, tradition, and survival skills, moving slowly across generations, guided by instinct, seasons, and the endless search for life. They crossed frozen plains under endless skies, through harsh winds and dangerous terrain, carrying with them not only tools and fire, but stories, beliefs, and knowledge that would shape an entire hemisphere. As centuries passed, these peoples spread southward, into forests, across mountains, through deserts, and along coastlines, adapting to every environment with extraordinary intelligence. Some became hunters of the Great Plains, following buffalo across open grasslands. Others became fishermen of the northern rivers and icy seas. Some mastered dense rainforests, while others built thriving cities in dry canyon lands and fertile valleys. From this ancient migration would rise hundreds of nations, each with its own language, spiritual traditions, architecture, governance, and worldview. These were civilizations born not from conquest alone, but from deep relationships with the land itself. They learned how to read the stars, predict the rains, cultivate crops, and preserve balance between human life and nature. Long before the rise of many European kingdoms, the Americas were already alive with knowledge, innovation, and culture. This was not the beginning of emptiness. It was the beginning of abundance. The first footsteps across Beringia were not just migration, they were the first chapter of one of humanity's greatest stories. And from those footsteps, an entire world was born. We begin our journey at the top of the world, in the frozen Arctic and subarctic regions of North America, the homeland of the Inuit, the Yupik, and the Aleut peoples. Here, survival was not simply a skill. It was a science, perfected over thousands of years. The Arctic is one of the harshest environments on Earth. Temperatures can fall to minus 60 degrees Celsius. The ground remains frozen year-round. For months, the sun does not rise and darkness covers the land. There are no forests, almost no plant food, and little room for error. Yet the Inuit did not merely survive here, they thrived. Using only what the land and sea provided, they built a civilization of extraordinary intelligence and resilience. Snow became shelter. Animal skins became clothing and boats. Bone became tools. Seal oil became light and warmth. The igloo, often seen as a simple snow house, was actually a masterpiece of engineering. Could keep the inside warm. Built from compacted even when the outside world arranged was in a spiral dome, its dome shape so resisted heavy snow and strong winds. Its tunnel entrance trapped cold air below, while warm air stayed above. This was not primitive design. It was advanced thermodynamics. The kayak was another brilliant invention. Made from driftwood or whalebone and covered in seal skin, it was light, silent, and perfectly built for Arctic hunting. Each kayak was custom-made for its hunter, becoming almost an extension of the body itself. Further south, we enter the rich forests of the eastern woodlands, home to powerful nations like the Haudenosaunee, known to Europeans as the Iroquois. They created one of the world's oldest living constitutions, the Great Law of Peace, a system of government based on unity, balance, and shared responsibility. It inspired ideas later seen in the United States Constitution. Leaders could be removed if they abused power, and decisions were made through discussion and consensus. Women also held great authority. Clan mothers selected chiefs, controlled property, and shaped political decisions. Long before modern democracy, these nations had already built societies based on law, respect, and wisdom. And along the Mississippi River, great cities like Cahokia rose, massive centers of trade, engineering, and culture. This was not wilderness, this was civilization. The Great Plains of North America stretch like an endless ocean of grass, from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains, and from Canada down into Texas. For thousands of years, this vast landscape was home to one of the richest ecosystems on Earth, dominated by the American bison. Animals that once moved in herds so large they seemed to darken the horizon itself. For the indigenous nations of the plains, the bison was not just wildlife, it was life itself. It provided food, clothing, shelter, tools, and fuel. Every part of the animal was used with purpose and respect, forming the foundation of a deeply sustainable way of living. Before the arrival of the horse, Plains peoples hunted on foot with extraordinary coordination. Entire communities worked together to guide bison into natural traps, such as cliffs or carefully constructed enclosures. These hunts required intelligence, planning, and deep understanding of animal behavior. Later, after horses were reintroduced to the continent, mobility and hunting transformed, giving rise to the iconic mounted cultures often associated with the plains. But the foundation of this civilization was already ancient, built long before the horse ever returned. Their dwellings, the teepees, reflected the same genius of adaptation. Lightweight, portable, and strong against wind and snow, they could be assembled quickly and moved with the seasonal migrations of the herds. Every material from the bison had a purpose. Hides became shelters and clothing. Bones became tools. Sinew became rope. Even fat and meat were preserved into pemmican, a powerful, long-lasting food that could sustain travel across vast distances. To the southwest, another world of brilliance emerged in the desert canyon lands. Here, the ancestral Puebloans built extraordinary stone cities into cliffs and open valleys. Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde and the great houses of Chaco Canyon reveal a civilization of engineers, architects, and astronomers. These structures were built without metal tools, yet achieved precision that still amazes modern builders. They managed water in dry landscapes, aligned buildings with the movements of the sun and moon, and created vast road systems connecting distant communities. Chaco Canyon was not just a settlement. It was a ceremonial and cultural center spanning tens of thousands of square miles, united through trade, astronomy, and shared knowledge. Many of these traditions continue today through the modern Pueblo peoples who still live in ancient villages and preserve the legacy of their ancestors. Across the plains and the Southwest, these civilizations reveal a single truth. This was not empty land. It was a continent shaped by intelligence, adaptation, and enduring culture. Narrator V.O. If there is a single image that captures the scale of indigenous civilization in the Americas, it is Tenochtitlan, the great capital of the Aztec Empire in 1519. Built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, the city rose from the water like a vision of stone and order. Causeways stretched across the lake, connecting it to the mainland in straight, engineered lines. Canals ran through its streets, allowing canoes to move like boats through a living city. From above, it was a floating metropolis of extraordinary design. When Spanish forces first saw it, They could not believe what they were witnessing. Accounts describe silence, shock, and disbelief. Some believed it was a dream. Others said they had never imagined a city of such scale and beauty. At its center stood temples and ceremonial platforms, rising above vast plazas where thousands of people moved daily. This was not a small settlement. It was a capital city of immense organization and power. Nearby stood the market of Tlatelolco, one of the largest in the world at the time. Tens of thousands of people gathered here each day, trading goods from across a vast empire. Cacao, textiles, gold, obsidian tools, feathers, food, and medicines all moved through a system of exchange that rivaled any global economy of its era. The Aztec civilization, or Mexica, was not isolated. It was the product of thousands of years of Mesoamerican development. Their knowledge of engineering, agriculture, and astronomy built upon earlier cultures that had flourished long before them. Among their greatest innovations were the chinampas, artificial farming islands built in shallow lakes. These highly productive systems allowed the city to feed hundreds of thousands of people from the surrounding waters alone. Yet Tenochtitlan was only one part of a much larger world. To the south, the Maya civilization had already reached extraordinary heights of intellectual achievement. They developed one of the most advanced writing systems in the ancient world, alongside complex calendars, precise astronomical calculations, and the mathematical concept of zero. Their cities, temples, and inscriptions reveal a society deeply connected to the movement of the stars and the cycles of time. And they never disappeared. Today, millions of Maya descendants continue to speak their languages, preserve their traditions, and carry forward knowledge that has survived centuries of change. Across Mesoamerica, from the Aztec heartlands to the Maya lowlands, the evidence is clear. These were not forgotten peoples. They were builders of some of the most advanced civilizations in human history. It was a continent shaped by intelligence, adaptation, and enduring culture. We have now traveled more than half the length of the Western Hemisphere, from the frozen Arctic to the tropical forests of Mesoamerica. But our journey is not yet complete. One final civilization remains, rising along the spine of the Andes, the Inca Empire, or Tawantinsuyu, the four regions together. At its greatest extent, the Inca Empire was the largest empire on Earth in the early 16th century, stretching over 4,000 miles from modern Colombia to Chile. It unified mountains, deserts, coastlines, and jungles into a single system of extraordinary organization, without iron tools, without the wheel for transport, and without a written alphabet. Yet what they built rivals any civilization in history. Cities like Machu Picchu appear carved directly from the mountains themselves, suspended above valleys wrapped in mist. The stonework is so precise that even centuries later, earthquakes have not broken it. Massive stones, some weighing hundreds of tons, were fitted together without mortar, yet remain perfectly stable. Instead of writing, the Inca used quipu, knotted cords that stored information through color, position, and structure. For a long time thought to be simple accounting tools, they are now understood to hold far deeper meaning, possibly even historical narratives still waiting to be fully decoded. Their empire was held together by the Capac Ñan, a vast road system crossing deserts, valleys, and mountains. Hanging bridges spanned deep gorges, while stone paths climbed impossible cliffs. Along these routes, trained runners called chasquis carried messages with astonishing speed, allowing communication to cross the empire in days rather than weeks. Even more impressive was their mastery of agriculture. High in the Andes, the Inca carved terraces into mountainsides, creating layered ecosystems that controlled water, prevented erosion, and produced food at extreme altitudes. From these lands came crops that would transform the world: potatoes, quinoa, maize, and many others that now feed billions globally. The Inca did not simply adapt to the Andes, they reshaped them into one of the most advanced civilizations the world has ever seen. We have traveled the length of 2 continents, from Arctic ice to Andean peaks, from dense forests to vast deserts, and yet we have only touched the surface of indigenous America. Every region we passed holds hundreds of cultures, languages, and histories we could not fully explore. From the Lakota of the Great Plains to the Navajo weavers of the Southwest, from the Maya farmers of Central America to the Quechua communities of the Andes, from the Inuit hunters of the far north to the Amazonian elders deep in the rainforest. This is not a single story, but thousands of interconnected civilizations. Before European contact, the Americas were home to advanced systems of agriculture, astronomy, governance, and trade. Knowledge of plants, ecosystems, and seasons was passed through generations with extraordinary precision. Many modern medicines and agricultural crops have origins in indigenous discovery and stewardship of the land. But the arrival of colonial powers brought catastrophic change. Disease, displacement, and forced assimilation destroyed entire populations and disrupted ancient ways of life. Languages were silenced, children were taken, lands were lost, and yet the story did not end. Today, more than 40 million indigenous people live across the Americas. Nations are rebuilding languages, restoring traditions, and strengthening self-governance. Communities like the Cherokee, the Zapatistas, and the Mapuche continue to defend identity, land, and culture. Indigenous knowledge is now recognized as vital in addressing global challenges, from climate change to biodiversity loss. Traditional fire management, farming systems, and ecological understanding are being studied and reintroduced around the world. This knowledge carries a principle older than modern borders, that humans are not separate from nature but part of it. And perhaps the most important lesson of all is this: indigenous civilizations were never frozen in the past. They are alive, evolving, and still shaping the future of the Americas today.